call the meeting to order for the August 21st Erie Land Bank meeting. And I'd like to kick it off by seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda and the minutes from our July 17th meeting.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Takes us to the finance report. April?
So in your packet, you have the profit and loss through January 2023 was showing net income $35,241.65. We have on the balance sheet in our bank accounts $169,320.22. And let me see.
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
The page right after profit and loss.
Page 1-3.
Yes. And it was showing we had accounts receivable of $76,301.87 for our total current assets of $245,622.09. We have updated the fixed assets, and it's over $1.2 million for the properties that we own right now. And we also had included the checks that were dispersed for July of 2023. And then behind that, separately, we wanted to include with the financial report approvals for the budget modifications for Work Plan 2022 and 23. It shows on there the categories that were changed. So on the 2022, the condemnation acquisition was increased by 25, and right below it shows that environmental abatement was reduced by the 25. That's where that was taken from. And then same with the increase in legal fees of $1,500 was reducing the rehabilitation category. The audit was increased by $5,000, and we reduced professional services and transferred that over. So then behind that is what the work plan would look like after those balances are transferred. Keeping the total of the $500,000 as the negotiated budget for Work Plan 22. And the one following that is for 2023. We only have a couple categories there that we were wanting to reallocate the funds. So software and equipment was going to increase by $7,000. Travel was going to increase by $2,000. Telephone by $1,000. And then we were reducing environmental abatement by $10,000 to make up for those.
Thank you for that. Any questions on the financials?
Yeah, I'm looking for condemnation acquisition, and that goes to the second page.
What was the question, Paul? So you're on the budget mod section, and then you're on work plan?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're looking under number 4
okay.
would be condemnation acquisition, where that line item would now be $25,000.
Right. It was $80,800 originally, and we wanted to increase that by $25,000 to be a total of $105,800.
Right. Okay, I see it now. Okay. Okay, I got it.
Any other questions?
$1,500 going to be enough for the legal fees? I know Mr. Sundberg has a lot of work.
So that was for just the remaining of Work Plan 2022 for the properties that were still going to be wrapped up and charged any ancillary legal fees that wouldn't fall under tax acquisition or condemnation. So we're hoping that it shouldn't be more than additional $1,500 from now to the end of this year.
Thank you.
Professional legal fees typically encompasses the monthly retainer and then any of the legal fees associated with evaluating our documents and making changes and suggested amendments to things like that. Things that aren't associated with a certain property and can't be categorized under another acquisition or disposition source.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the financial report? Deb, you good? Do you have another question?
Oh,
No, you're good? Okay. Then I would seek a motion to approve the finance report.
So move.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, takes us to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens that have requested to speak? Anyone online?
Doesn't appear so.
Doesn't look like it. Okay. We can move right into the report of the executive director then. Aaron?
All right, thank you. So I know I did send an email out after, probably a month or so ago, about the National Land Bank Summit. I know a couple of you have responded to that with interest to attend. So we will have those reservations and put into that this week so that those individuals will be able to attend the National Land Bank Summit in Cleveland. If anybody else is still interested that hasn't responded, let us know so that we can get that registration put through. As far as just general work plan updates, we're continuing to process through demolition activities on the judicial tax sale properties that we acquired off the 2023 sale. Couple other issues have come up on some of those that we will work through with some. We have a property on 24th Street with a garage that is connected to the neighboring structure, so we're going to have to do some remediation there. And then we continue to work through the sales on the properties, and I'm sure Gene will touch on those. So that's my report for today.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move right to solicitor's report then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. And I do appreciate your concern, Mr. Gamble, with regard to these, but I think we're in good shape. But I do appreciate your concern. The December tax sales, again, we had to wait to 6 months to make sure that none of those then property owners objected. They haven't. We have filed the quiet title petitions. They've been filed and served. We are now going through the process. We're advertising for any additional parties or lien holders with regard to the quiet title action. That will ultimately result in a court order saying that any interest, lien, or encumbrance on the property is hereby stricken and is not valid, thereby vesting all right, title, and interest in the land bank to be able to sell to the third party. So that should be done here within the next 30 to 60 days. There is one holdout at 519, 521 East 29th Street. This gentleman is hunkered down and refusing to leave. We have filed an ejectment action, and it's a process to go through where the sheriff's office helps us in notifying the individual, and if so, will accompany us to physically remove that individual. I hope we don't get to that, but he knows that we mean business and that we're moving forward to that end goal. So that takes a little bit more time, but we knew that that gentleman was in, so we were coinciding all of our filings in a timely manner to make sure that he was not a holdout for an extended period of time. So we're in good shape there. As our office continues to work through these, page 2, you'll see what's been completed, and then as I reported last month, we met with the solicitors for the different row offices and have worked out what will be a proposed order at the end of a condemnation action, directing those solicitors to remove those back taxes, delinquent taxes, or municipal liens by directive of court order. Now, what I've now done is circled back on those condemnations that are already completed that the land bank wants to sell to third parties. So I'm working with those solicitors for them to file based upon our directive, because we've already had the final order from the court, is to remove these liens and encumbrances on these properties. I'm anticipating that that will be done within the next 30 days for the next meeting, so that the land bank can then finalize these sales to the third parties. So we're literally in contact with them, proposing the satisfaction or termination of those municipal liens and back taxes so that we can proceed forward. So we're working proactively with future orders, but now we're circling back saying, okay, how do we address these properties that still have those of record to be able to take care of them? So I've been in communication with those solicitors. They're working with me to help accommodate that, so that, again, we can in turn sell these properties from the land bank to the third parties.
Oh. This is the third party. Would those be the third party? The third party, is that where you have the LP, like to Hands?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and that's
those
those
are the
third parties, right? Hands, LaCara, Williams, Zach, Wargo. So I'm identifying who these buyers, the third parties, that the land bank is looking to get them to, and they're the ones going, hey, these are still of record, these back taxes, these municipal liens, and
Okay.
things like that. They're saying, hey, Gene, you need to clear these up. Well, the condemnation action extinguished them, but they're still of record. So now I'm working with the solicitors to formally remove them, to have satisfactions filed specifically with regard to those.
Thank you.
I'm trying to tidy up the chain of title so that even when these people go to sell, that next buyer's going, well, whatever happened with this old municipal lien back in 2019? Well, we addressed it through the condemnation, and we satisfied it formally of record with a subsequent filing, so that it's clear.
Okay, thank you.
So there's no automatic mechanism for that. You would think they would be connected somehow.
Well, my thought was the initial condemnation action is that automatic recognition,
Right.
process, so that when they're doing the title search, they're saying, okay, there was a condemnation action that extinguished all of these. But title companies and some buyers are now saying, well, we see that condemnation action, but that isn't removing that back taxes that are still of record. Well, so again, I kind of said it before. Now you're doing a belt and suspenders approach. You're double whamming or double removing that to satisfy third parties or a title company, and that's fine. That's fine. So now what I'm doing is the condemnation action is resolving it, but the new court orders that I'm preparing for the new set of condemnation action is specifically going to address and direct those row offices to remove those of record. So I think it's an extra step, and obviously it was an extra step that I wasn't doing as part of the condemnation action, because I was thinking it's taken care of. Just That's what the condemnation action is doing. Well, that wasn't enough. That's fine. We'll go back and get these, but we're anxious to get these, land banks, we're anxious to get these sold to the third party, so we're working on that to get that done.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before, tidying that up. It's just, it's too bad that one doesn't automatically force the other, and I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
internal
Now-
housekeeping issue, but now we've got to go through these extra steps to make it happen, which is unfortunate.
It is, but I'm going, okay, instead of arguing with them and saying, hey, look, no, we're not going to do that, the condemnation action already took care of that, it's easier for me just to go through and work with, the Tax Claim Bureau and the treasurer to resolve them, and just say, okay, all right, we're doing this twice, but all right, well, we'll just do it. So that's what my new paralegal and I are taking care of right now. So thank you for your patience, because I know that everybody's anxious to get these into these third parties, and we want to as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for our solicitor before we move on? All right, let's move into unfinished business and new business, 2023 tax sale.
All right, so I included in your packet the list of City of Erie properties identified on the 2023 judicial tax sale. The ones that are kind of grayed out on the copy, of course, have been removed. Tax sale hasn't updated since early July, the list, so we're not really aware of any other ones that may have been satisfied to date. So reached out trying to get an updated list there so we can try to narrow this down. I know Mindy has done her due diligence so far and identified roughly about 24 properties that kind of meet the initial qualifications. Utilities are inactive, and other such things. So now it's going to start that process of going out, doing site visits of the properties to try to determine if they are unoccupied, utilities have been cut, or there is no occupancy at those properties. So hopefully by next month we'll have a more refined list of those properties for your review to try to make that final determination of what properties we will put our option in on for the 2023 sale. Yeah, that's really about it at this point until we get that updated list and are able to vet those out.
So you said at least initially there's maybe 20 that,
There's about 24 right
Meet
now
the
with
initial.
inactive water service. So those are the ones we're going to start with. There are several other ones on there with active water service, and as we historically have seen, doesn't necessarily mean the property's occupied. Some cases, elderly residents are moved into a nursing home and the water authority leaves the water on. It's happened before, so there are some additional ones we're going to follow up on. So like I said, we'll weed that list out and get a more defined list for you within the next month.
great.
So I just provided if there was any thoughts as far as, from the board, as far as recommendations on properties to acquire, if you have a chance to look through it, email in those recommendations to us so that we can, try to incorporate any of those thoughts or ideas into the acquisition for 2024. And we can kind of talk more about that on the 2024 work plan as well.
So I guess I'll go back to what I've mentioned a couple times, maybe to try to focus, to be intentional about more of a target area as opposed to a scattershot approach. I mean, and I'm sure you're considering that. I guess it's a comment more than a question. I mean, I think it's still better to try to focus the efforts in a smaller area to show progress.
And certainly, between the authority and the land banks, we have areas that are of great need, and we know that we're working on. Certainly, the tax sale doesn't allow us much flexibility to target, but we certainly can. We know we certainly want to go after the ones that are already declared blighted. There's really no point to have those reside on any more lists. go to another property owner or another, investor in an attempt that we wait another 3 years for them to come back to a tax sale. So we certainly would, prioritize optioning those properties. I know, last year, 2023, we did target the East Avenue corridor as a priority, for the tax sale and the condemnation actions to try to help, with that project over there that they're working on. So yeah, we try to focus, and then really to go into the 2024 work plan, the land bank has the ability to go citywide, and certainly, the redevelopment authority has the American Rescue Plan funds to target QCTs. Certainly, we want to look at kind of the areas that surround the QCTs in which we don't really have funding for. And we know and we have seen over the last 2 years an increase in blighted properties south of 26th Street, over into the Fairmont McClelland area, down into the Lighthouse, Hess Street area. So we've seen an increase in blight in those areas. So we want to make sure that we're addressing those areas and try to mitigate that sprawl of vacant and abandoned properties.
Oh, thank you for that. It makes sense,
Yeah.
and I know you do consider those things. I just want to keep that in the forefront of our minds, that, and we've discussed that qualified tract versus we have a wider, we have more flexibility, so I appreciate that. Okay, any questions on this list? We'll just stand by, and as this tightens up, we'll get a better feel for 2024 then.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess just timeline-wise, we want to have, typically we have our options into the Tax Claim Bureau by October. So, we'll be looking, like I said, coming into the September meeting to try to get that narrowed down so we can get those option agreements put together.
Okay. All right, good with that. Work plan proposal.
All right, so for you today is the proposed 2024 work plan for the Erie Land Bank. As we've done the past several years, tried to be as aggressive as possible within the city of Erie, certainly knowing that we have a lot of vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated properties. So listed on there, we have tax sale acquisition of 20 properties, blight condemnation acquisition of 18 properties, and then a new category this year is we've added 30 quiet title actions to this because of the issues that Gene had spoke of with going through some of these properties. If you remember back when we amended the policies and procedures to side lot owners would join the new acquired side lot as one parcel, a lot of issues have come up with not being able to get a certified title, Gene, help me out, like warranty deed or on the property. So quiet title action is needed to get that title insurance on the property. So we're just trying to make sure that we're being good stewards of those to the individuals who are purchasing those. Moving forward, have had some thoughts, and we'll probably bring it to the board in the coming months to amend our policies and procedures and increase the cost of purchasing a side lot. Currently, it's $500. We waive the $750 transaction fee, but with the quiet title action and all that legal work that goes into cleaning up those properties, $500 isn't quite covering those costs. So I'm going to look at trying to get some average of what those costs are and bring a recommendation to the board and try to stay on that line of what's feasible for a side lot property owner to purchase it financially, but also, how much does the land bank want to subsidize that cost as well. So hopefully I'll have that here in the next few months. And then, moving down kind of into the property maintenance section, demolitions, 30 demolitions out of that, $255,000 estimated, some environmental abatement. Just clarification, the environmental abatement is for any of the properties that are commercial, where we would have to do asbestos abatement on those properties prior to demolition. Rehabilitation, left in some money for rehabilitation, so that might be several different things. Of course, seasonal care, board and seal, trash removal and clean out, and then administrative staffing, administrative and legal costs, rounded out to $956,500 is an estimated proposed work plan budget for 2024. Any questions with that before I kind of go over the breakdown of the source of the funding?
No, just a comment I'd like to make, and I don't know if it's with the redevelopment authority or the land bank, but some of these properties that get sold and then the new owner is unable to maintain or do anything with them, and then they become blighted. And for example, we talked the other day about the property on 300 block where a young man lost his wife and 2 children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I know we don't have any liability for, as far as taking care of them, or during the winter time when snow removal is absolutely necessary for kids going to school, say at McKinley, and they have to walk in the street because these properties don't have snow removal. Who, as a resident of there, can we look to shovel the snow?
Right. So
or cut the grass, or the weeds now, not grass.
yeah,
Yep.
the simple answer is really that all falls back onto the current property owner and code enforcement as far as enforcing. I mean, tall grass, weeds, jumping debris certainly falls on code enforcement. Sidewalks in the wintertime is a zoning issue, and certainly one that nobody really wants to touch. I know because, I mean, to chase down unplowed or shoveled sidewalks across the city of Erie would be a tremendous undertaking. But I know, just to speak to the point about, you know, those properties deeding over, we have made changes when we do file deeds on lots that aren't associated with a neighboring property. A memorandum to maintain is filed on the property so that we can kind of have a little bit more leverage toward taking that property back in the event that they do not maintain the property, something that wasn't done previously with a lot of those lots that you speak of there on 23rd Street. So that has been something that we have instituted to give us a little bit of enforcement action post-sale.
Okay, that's what I need to hear. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah. All right, so source of funds. So, of course, Erie County Demolition Fund, Act 152, looking to leverage $175,000 there. With property sales decreasing in the county, the amount being deposited into that fund on a monthly basis has probably decreased about 60% since 2020, you know, at the height of property transfers, and we were seeing, I think, almost $26,000 a month. Now we're seeing roughly $10,000 to $12,000 a month going into that fund. So we would certainly want to leverage, again, our ARPA blight mitigation from the redevelopment authority for properties located within the QCTs, utilize that funding for demolition. And then we're, you know, going to ask for another $500,000 from the Erie County Land Bank from their gaming revenue funds to help offset the majority of this work plan. And then Erie Land Bank property sale proceeds of $106,500 to complete and round out the $956,000 budget. So, like I said, this is the proposed plan. What, you know, if the board agrees today, we would put over to the Erie County Land Bank for them to put in front of their governance committee meeting in September, with hopefully for their approval either in September or October. And then we would come back to the board with a proposed budget for 2024 for the Erie Land Bank.
Sounds good.
So Aaron, thank you for that summary. Is there enough market demand to look at that $500 side lot fee? I know we've had trouble in the past because some folks just sort of treat it like it's their own side lot and they don't want to go through the process. I mean, I'm all about exploring, you know, the sale proceeds line item on here, but I also don't want to I don't want to encourage folks to not move on a side lot either. Do you have a feel for that? I mean,
That's, yeah, and that's kind of that point of diminishing return is kind of where I'm at and what that recommendation would be. Certainly knowing that typically, you know, redevelopment authority lots, we have a hard time selling them for $250. You know, so 500, when individuals call, you know, they cringe a little bit. And then when they, you know, go to close on the property and we've added all the costs for combining the two parcels, you know, those fees are there as well. So that's kind of where we got to look at what those total costs are, what that buyer's actually paying at closing, and see if an increase would hurt, or, you know, if in reality, you know, it's not that much. Majority of our sale proceeds come from developer agreement properties. You know, where we're getting $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a house that someone's going to develop, rehab, and do whatever the proposed plan is with. So the $500 isn't necessarily doing much for our bottom line, but, you know, it's also a point that we're losing a little bit of funding there.
yeah, because how many are we doing a year, side lot? Not that many.
No, 10 or 12.
Yeah. I mean, I'd almost rather go the other way and try to incentivize neighbors to buy the lot next to them and clean it up. Because it's not a big money maker here.
Right, and that,
That's why we're working together to
Yeah.
try to itemize those, what the costs are, fees, filing fees. So I'm working with Aaron in his office to give an idea so that, you know, an economic decision can be made in-house.
Yeah.
because we've already removed, you know, really combining those two parcels, we've lost that 50% tax for 5 years, you know, so we're kind of getting rid of that as a revenue, which was only $100 a year per lot. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just, but I agree with you, and us holding them in inventory it's not making us any money as well. It's costing us roughly,
Right.
you know, $400 a year a lot to maintain it.
Yeah, and it's just meant to keep the conversation going. I don't know what that answer is today, but I don't think we're in a position where it can support higher fees. I think that's gonna go against what we're trying to accomplish. It's an economic decision that folks are already making, and all too often, the decision is not to buy it and just let it sit there.
Point taken.
And then they just use it as their own.
They treat it as if it's their own anyways, because nobody else is coming along to do it. So I really want to try to incentivize folks to do the right thing, and I just don't know if there's much there to squeeze out. But I could be wrong. I just want to make sure that we try to maintain competitiveness, that we're realistic about what folks can do here. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
No, I just think most of them maintain the lots. Most people I know, they maintain them. And if there's a need to really increase that minimum above 500, it's something we should look at. Then there are those that don't, you know. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to bring us different ideas, and we can toss them around. So.
Yeah, well, certainly, and we, you know, National Land Bank Summit in October, we can certainly engage other individuals, other land banks from other states, and see what they're, I mean, Pennsylvania's kind of new to land banking. Ohio has had it for many, many years, so, you know, and many other states have done it for a while, so we'll certainly leverage the experience of those land banks to help with, you know, some recommendations to the board.
All right, any questions on the plan? All right, let's go ahead and move on to other business, if there is any.
That is all I have for today.
Okay. Very good. All right, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Gene. And that is all we have for the day. We are adjourned. Thank you.
You.